Making games is hard, like really hard. That's why when anyone asks if the game I'm solo developing will have multiplayer, I can say with confidence, no. What, does Unity think they can just throw money at me and I'll add multiplayer? So I guess we were adding multiplayer, but I have no experience with this. And full disclosure, I did let Unity know that, and their response was that I give myself 7 days to implement it. I thought this was a great idea at the time, but thinking about it, now it feels like a challenge and I'm even more stressed. I can do this though, right? This may or may not be obvious, but Mana Valley is an RPG, and I can't just make an MMO in 7 days. I'll need to focus on a much smaller portion. I have a few ideas, so let's put them to a poll. Room racing, co-op wave defense, or arena PvP. We'll check the results a little bit later when we're ready to implement gameplay. In the meantime, I'm going to read through the Unity docs on Netcode for game objects and try implementing something simple. After binge watching Tarodev and Code Monkey videos, I finally have a lobby set up and it looks like this. I know, but stay with me here. You can create a lobby, get a code to send friends, and once everyone is readied up, the host can launch the game. I mean, there's nothing to play technically, but we are sending information between players online. Up to this point, I've made Mana Valley with the assumption that it was always going to be single player. So that means I can't just use the same character and call it a day. But hypothetically, let's say I did make the mistake of doing that. Each player would literally control all of the players in the game.
Brains.
So maybe we'll just make a copy and make a few edits so that doesn't happen. We're ready to move on to gameplay. So let's look at the result of our poll. Oh wow, it looks like Broom Racing won by an overwhelming margin. What great news, because after learning about multiplayer, it would have been way more difficult to add something like arena PvP. Thankfully, I previously made a scuffed Mario Kart, so I know how to make a racing game, and flying is already in the game. Currently, you can transition between flying and walking pretty seamlessly, and when you hit something, you're forced to exit flying mode. I think that would be pretty frustrating for Broom Racing, so I'm just going to make it so that the player is always flying. Other than that, the mechanic works the same. You're always moving in the direction you're looking, and you can left click to boost, which consumes mana. Different brooms have different stats, but for simplicity, we're just going to give everyone the same broom for now. In Mario Kart, the player goes around the track through invisible checkpoints. This works because the character is confined to the course. As long as the checkpoint is large enough, you can always be sure the player is going to go through it. We can't do the same with flying. The only solution I could think of was adding rings as the checkpoints. Unfortunately, this is also the solution this other indie game implemented. Anyway, the player gets mana every time they go through a ring. The closer they are to the center, the more mana they get. Currently, it's balanced so that as long as you're relatively accurate, you'll be able to boost the entire race. I had Mrs. Aya try it, and I think it was a little too fast for her. Maybe we should reduce the speed a little. She also didn't know which ring she was supposed to go through, so I made the next ring gold. When she tried it again, she specifically asked for some effects when going through them. Everything was working really well in single player, but when I used parallel sync to try multiple clients, boosting didn't work. I spent hours trying to figure it out. In a last-ditch effort, I threw my code into ChatGPT and it found my mistake? I know AI gets a lot of bad press, but holy cow, if this isn't the holiest of assists, I don't know what is. The basic course was constructed using Unity's terrain tool, and then I manually added rocks around the edge to make it a little bit nicer. I ran a bunch of laps and added things here and there to make each part of the track feel a little bit different. Ultimately, the track ended up with a few major sections: the gorge, trees, a cave, village, narrow rock pass, and waterfall. It's the morning of day 6, and I think the game is ready for a playtest.
2 hours later.
Okay, so I guess most people have school or jobs during the day. Fortunately, my friend Gless is a full-time streamer on Twitch, and his streams start later in the day. He opened up the game and I may have made the music volume a little too loud. We hopped into a game and everything seemed to work. A little later, our friend Bandit joined and Gless offered to run a live test later with the stream. There were a few loose ends I needed to tie up before then, but I had enough time, so I agreed. At this point, the lobby is set up to work for teams. I know it's a bit weird for a racing game, but I always feel like after the person first finishes, people kind of check out. If each place had a point value that contributed to a team score, it might help keep everyone interested longer. I don't have time to implement that whole system, but I wanted to give each player a team outfit. I picked the home outfit and Mrs. Aya picked the away outfit. Let us know in the comments who you think picked the better outfit. I also wanted to randomize everyone's look for now, so I implemented that. I didn't really run into any trouble with any of that, just some minor bugs that took fixing, but it did take me longer than expected. Quite a bit longer. Okay, so Gless is talking to thousands of people about how he's going to showcase the game. And as we speak, I'm slowly uploading to Steam. And Unity just sent me a DM asking for an update on my progress. But instead of doing deep breathing exercises like my therapist recommends, let's pull up our multiplayer nightmare bingo card. Looks like we won today's prize. Regret. That's honestly how it felt at the time, but in hindsight, it wasn't really so bad. I mean, don't get me wrong, it was definitely buggy, but through a few different races, everyone was able to try the game in some capacity. Except for G, I think the game made his laptop catch on fire. There's still one day left, but after an emotional roller coaster of a day, I needed to get some rest. I woke up early and started digging into errors. One by one, I fixed them, and by midday, I was ready for another test. We launched the lobby, players joined, and everything worked. Well, for the most part. Everyone in the lobby was located around here, with the exception of Little Clone, who lives across the pond in Germany. She was able to run most of the races with us, but on one occasion seemed to get disconnected from the relay. It happened to be when we were getting shots for this video and joking about how we were going to all be famous on YouTube. She typed the saddest message in Discord, so make sure you send her some love in the comments. But aside from that, everything worked pretty well. Obviously, there are lingering bugs, but to be able to go from no experience with multiplayer to have a functioning online multiplayer game in 7 days, that's pretty sick. If this is something you want to do, you should totally check out Netcode for game objects, and I would say that even if Unity wasn't sponsoring this video. It takes a bit to wrap your head around everything, but once it clicks, everything kind of falls into place. While we check out some Mana Valley fan art, a huge thank you to our Patreon supporters and YouTube members. You're the sparkly incantation that keeps this project afloat. If you want to support the project yourself, there's a link in the description. And I'm just saying, anyone at or above the Enchanter tier now receives access to the game. If you're curious to see how far the game has come, you can click this video to see where flying started.